The morning started like any other Tuesday. Maria woke up at 6, made her coffee, and got ready for her shift at the diner. She had about 20 minutes before she needed to catch the bus, and the trash was overflowing. Again. Her 2 boys never remembered to take it out no matter how many times she asked. But that was teenage sons for you. She grabbed the heavy bag from the kitchen and another from the bathroom, tying them tight. The November air hit her face the moment she stepped outside. Cold. Really cold. The kind of cold that made her wish she'd grabbed her heavier coat. But it was just a quick trip to the dumpster behind the apartment building, so she pushed through. The alley was quiet. Most people in the building were still sleeping or getting ready for work. Maria walked to the big green dumpster and lifted the heavy lid with one hand, while hoisting the trash bags with the other. That's when she heard it, a sound so faint she almost missed it. A tiny cry. Like a kitten, maybe? She stopped. Listened. There it was again. Definitely coming from inside the dumpster. Maria leaned in closer, squinting in the dim morning light. That's when she saw it. A small bundle wrapped in what looked like a hospital blanket, tucked between black garbage bags. And it was moving. Her heart nearly stopped. Was that? No, it couldn't be. But then she heard it again, clearer this time. The unmistakable sound of a baby crying. Not a kitten, a baby. A real human baby. In the trash. Maria dropped her own garbage bags and reached in with both hands, her mind racing. Her fingers touched the blanket and she carefully, so carefully, pulled the bundle toward her. The baby was tiny, so tiny, and when she unwrapped the blanket just enough to see, she gasped. A newborn, a little girl. Her umbilical cord was still attached, tied off with what looked like a shoelace. The baby's lips had a bluish tint, and her little body felt cold even through the blanket. Oh my God. Oh my God. Maria heard herself saying the words out loud, but it felt like someone else was talking. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the baby. How long had this child been out here? An hour? 2 hours? More? In this freezing weather? The baby let out another weak cry and something clicked in Maria's brain. Move, stop standing here. Do something. She pulled off her own jacket and wrapped it around the baby, holding the tiny body close to her chest. Then she ran. Not walked. Ran. Back to her apartment, up the 3 flights of stairs, her lungs burning by the time she burst through her front door. Call 911. Call 911 right now, she shouted. Her oldest son, Danny, came stumbling out of his room, half asleep and confused. When he saw the baby in his mother's arms, his eyes went wide. Mom, what? Is that a baby? Call 911, Danny, now! Maria was already in the kitchen, turning on the warm water, testing it with her elbow the way she used to when her boys were infants. Not too hot. Not too cold. Just warm enough. She held the baby close to the running water, letting the warmth surround them both. The baby's cries grew a little stronger. That was good, right? That meant she was fighting. She was alive. Danny was on the phone with the dispatcher, his voice shaking as he tried to explain what was happening. Maria could hear the woman on the other end asking questions. Where did you find the baby? Is she breathing? How cold is she? Danny kept looking at his mother for answers. Tell them I found her in the dumpster, behind our building. She's breathing, but she's so cold. Her lips are blue. Tell them to hurry. Please tell them to hurry. The next 10 minutes felt like 10 hours. Maria sat on the couch, still wrapped around the baby, rubbing the tiny arms and legs gently, trying to warm her up. Her younger son, Luis, had woken up too and was standing in the doorway, looking scared. Neither of the boys had ever seen their mother like this. Maria was always the calm one, the one who handled everything, but right now tears were streaming down her face. Please be okay, she whispered to the baby. Please, little one. Please be okay. The baby's eyes opened briefly. Dark eyes looking up at Maria like she was trying to figure out where she was. Who this person was holding her. Maria felt something break open in her chest. This baby had been thrown away. Like trash. Like she didn't matter. Like her life meant nothing. What kind of desperation led to this? What kind of pain? The sirens came screaming up the street, and within seconds there was pounding on the door. Paramedics rushed in with their equipment and warm blankets. A woman with kind eyes knelt beside Maria. You did good, she said softly. You saved her life. Can I take her now? Maria didn't want to let go. Her arms actually ached at the thought of handing this baby over, but she knew she had to. These people could help her in ways Maria couldn't. She carefully transferred the tiny bundle to the paramedic's arms. "Is she going to be okay?" Maria asked, her voice cracking. "Because of you, she's got a real chance. If she'd been out there much longer." The paramedic didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. They worked quickly, checking the baby's temperature, her breathing, her heart rate. One of them radioed to the hospital using words Maria didn't understand. Medical terms, numbers. But she caught enough to know the baby was in trouble. Hypothermia, possible infection. They needed to move fast. "We're taking her to Brooklyn General," another paramedic told Maria. "The police will need to talk to you." "Get your statement," Maria nodded. She watched them carry the baby out of her apartment, down the stairs into the ambulance. She stood at her window and watched the red lights disappear around the corner. Only then did she realize she was still in her house slippers and her jacket was gone, wrapped around a baby she didn't even know. The police arrived about 20 minutes later. 2 officers, both looking grim. They asked her to walk them through everything. What time did she go outside? Exactly where was the baby? Did she see anyone? Hear anything? Did she touch anything else in the dumpster? Maria answered every question, but her mind was elsewhere. She kept seeing those dark eyes looking up at her. Kept feeling the weight of that tiny body in her arms. Who was this baby? Where was her mother? Was it someone in the building? Someone nearby? How could someone do this? "You're a hero, you know," one of the officers said as they were leaving. "Most people wouldn't have even looked in that dumpster. You gave that baby a fighting chance." But Maria didn't feel like a hero. She felt sick, angry, heartbroken. She sent her boys off to school, called the diner to say she'd be late, and then she sat on her couch and cried. Really cried. For that baby who'd been thrown away. For the mother who must have been so desperate or so troubled that this seemed like her only option. For the whole broken world that let things like this happen. Later that afternoon, Maria called the hospital. She had to know. They couldn't give her much information because she wasn't family, but a kind nurse told her the baby was stable. She was going to make it. They'd named her Hope as a temporary name until they figured out what to do with her. Hope. Maria liked that. The baby needed hope. They all did. That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She kept getting up to look out the window at the alley below, at the dumpster where she'd found Hope just hours before. How many times had she walked past that dumpster? Hundreds, thousands. What if she hadn't taken out the trash this morning? What if she'd been running late? What if she hadn't heard that tiny cry? The what-ifs kept her awake until dawn. The phone call started the next morning, reporters, news stations. Everyone wanted to talk to the woman who'd saved the baby from the dumpster. Maria only agreed to one interview, and only because she hoped it might help find the mother. Maybe if the woman saw the story, she'd come forward. Maybe she needed help. Maybe she was scared and alone. The reporter was nice enough, a young woman with a notepad and a photographer. They took pictures of Maria standing near the dumpster, though she hated every second of it. This wasn't about her. This was about a baby who deserved better. "How did it feel when you found her?" the reporter asked. "How did it feel?" Like the world stopped spinning. Like every nerve in her body was on fire. Like someone had reached into her chest and squeezed her heart. But Maria just said, "Scary. I was scared for her." The story ran in the local paper the next day. Woman saves abandoned newborn. There was Maria's picture, looking tired and worried. The article mentioned that police were searching for the mother, that charges could be filed, but that they also wanted to offer help and resources. Maria read it 3 times, hoping each time that her phone would ring with news, but no one came forward. Not that day. Not that week. Not ever. Maria called child services every few days at first, just to check on Hope, just to make sure she was okay. The caseworker, a woman named Mrs. Patterson, was patient with her questions. Hope was in foster care now, with an experienced family who specialized in caring for newborns. She was gaining weight. Getting stronger. She was going to be just fine, physically at least. "Can I see her?" Maria asked during one call. There was a pause on the other end. "That's complicated. You're not family. And she's in the custody of the state now." "I know, but I found her. I saved her. I just want to make sure she's really okay." Another pause. "Let me see what I can do." Mrs. Patterson called back 2 days later. She'd arranged for Maria to visit Hope at the foster home just once. It was unusual, she said. But given the circumstances, she thought it might help Maria find closure. Closure. That wasn't what Maria wanted, but she didn't argue. She took the bus across town to a nice house in a quiet neighborhood. The foster mother, Mrs. Chen, was in her 50s with warm hands and a gentle smile. She led Maria to a room where Hope was sleeping in a bassinet, wrapped in a pink blanket. Maria stood there for a long time, just watching the baby breathe. In and out. In and out. Her color was good now. Her cheeks were full. She looked like any normal, healthy baby, like she'd never been left in a dumpster on a freezing November morning. She's beautiful, Maria whispered. She is, Mrs. Chen agreed. And she's a fighter. The doctor said she shouldn't be doing this well, but she is. Maria reached out and gently touched Hope's tiny hand. The baby's fingers curled around her thumb, and Maria felt that same feeling from before. That connection. That sense that this baby was somehow meant to cross her path. What's going to happen to her? Maria asked. They'll try to find her birth mother first. If they can't, or if she doesn't want the baby back, Hope will be put up for adoption. There's already a long list of families waiting. A healthy newborn? She'll have a home in no time. A home. That was good. That's what Hope deserved. A real home with people who wanted her. People who could give her everything she needed. But as Maria rode the bus home that afternoon, something settled in her chest. An idea. Maybe more than an idea. What if she could adopt Hope? What if she could give this baby the home she deserved? Maria was 42 years old, single, working as a waitress, living in a small 3-bedroom apartment with her 2 teenage sons. On paper, she probably wasn't anyone's first choice as an adoptive parent. But she loved that baby. From the moment she'd pulled her out of that dumpster, she'd loved her. She called Mrs. Patterson the next day. I want to adopt Hope, Maria said, her voice steady. I want to be considered as a possible placement. There was that pause again. The kind of pause that meant bad news was coming. Maria, I think that's wonderful. Really, I do. But there are requirements. Financial requirements. Home studies. Background checks. And I have to be honest with you. Single parents working minimum wage jobs typically don't make it through the approval process. The state wants to place children in homes with 2 parents and financial stability. But I have financial stability. I've never missed rent. I've raised 2 boys on my own. They're good kids. Honor roll students. I can give Hope a good home. I believe you can. But the system has rules. I can start the paperwork if you want, but I need you to understand that it's going to be an uphill battle. Maria started the paperwork anyway. She filled out forms. She got letters of recommendation from her boss at the diner, from her landlord, from her son's teachers. She cleaned her apartment from top to bottom and borrowed money from her sister to buy a crib just in case. The home study took 3 weeks. A social worker came to the apartment, asked a million questions, interviewed her boys, looked through every room. Danny and Luis were confused at first, but when Maria explained that she wanted to adopt the baby she'd found, they both nodded. That's cool, Mom, Danny said. We could use a little sister. You think you guys could handle a baby around here? Crying at night, diapers? The whole thing? Luis grinned. We've handled you for 16 years. We can handle a baby. Maria waited for the decision. Days turned into weeks. She kept going to work, kept calling Mrs. Patterson for updates, kept praying every night that somehow, some way, this would work out. The call came on a Friday afternoon. Maria was at work, carrying a tray of burgers to table 6 when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She set down the tray and stepped outside to take the call. Maria, it's Mrs. Patterson. I have news about the adoption application. Maria's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Okay, I'm sorry. The committee reviewed your application and they've decided to deny it. Your financial situation, you're just barely above the poverty line. And with 2 dependents already, they don't think you can adequately provide for another child. I'm so sorry. I really pushed for you, but Maria didn't hear the rest. She mumbled something like, thank you for trying, and ended the call. Then she stood there in the alley behind the diner, the same alley where the garbage was kept, and she let herself cry. Really cry. The kind of crying that came from somewhere deep and primal. She'd known it was a long shot. She'd known the odds were against her. But she'd let herself hope anyway. She'd let herself imagine tucking Hope into that crib at night, watching her grow up, being her mom. And now that dream was gone. When Maria went back inside, her boss took one look at her face and told her to go home. She took the bus back to her apartment in a daze. Danny and Luis were playing video games in the living room and they knew immediately something was wrong. They said no, Maria told them. I can't adopt her. Her boys, her wonderful boys who were almost men now, both got up and hugged their mother. They didn't say anything. They just held her while she cried. Over the next few weeks, Maria tried to move on. She stopped calling Mrs. Patterson so often. She tried not to think about Hope every single day. But it was hard, so hard. Every time she took out the trash, she thought about that morning. Every time she saw a baby in the diner, she wondered if Hope looked like that now. If she was smiling yet. If she was sleeping through the night. Mrs. Patterson called one more time about 6 weeks after the denial. I wanted you to know that Hope has been adopted, she said gently. A couple from New Jersey. Both teachers. They're wonderful people and they're going to love her so much. That's good, Maria managed to say. That's really good. She deserves that. She does. And Maria, she's alive because of you. Never forget that. You gave her the chance to have this life. After they hung up, Maria pulled out the newspaper clipping she'd saved from that first article, the one with her picture standing by the dumpster. She looked at it for a long time, then carefully folded it and tucked it into her Bible, right in the book of Psalms. Her favorite prayers were in there. And this was a kind of prayer, too, a prayer that Hope would be okay, that she'd grow up happy and healthy and loved. The years passed. Danny graduated high school and went to community college. Luis followed 2 years later. Maria kept working at the diner and eventually became the assistant manager. The tips were better in that position. Life went on, but Maria never forgot. Every November, on the anniversary of finding Hope, she lit a candle and said a prayer. She wondered where Hope was. If she was starting kindergarten. If she'd lost her first tooth. If she knew how much one stranger had loved her. Even if they'd never really had the chance to know each other. On Hope's 10th birthday, Maria did something she'd never done before. She wrote a letter. She didn't know where to send it, so she just wrote it and put it in an envelope addressed to Hope. She told her about the morning she'd found her, about how she'd tried to adopt her, about how she'd never stopped thinking about her, about how she hoped wherever Hope was, she was happy. Maria never mailed the letter. She kept it in her Bible with the newspaper clipping, but writing it had helped somehow. It made Hope feel real again. Not just a memory or a what-if, but a real person out there somewhere living her life. And maybe, Maria thought, that was enough. Maybe it had to be. The Richardsons told her on a sunny Saturday afternoon, 3 days after her 12th birthday. They'd taken her to her favorite park, bought her ice cream, and then sat her down on a bench overlooking the pond. That's when Hope knew something serious was coming. Her parents only used that tone when they had to talk about important things. Sweetheart, there's something we need to tell you, her mom started, glancing at her dad for support. Something about where you came from. Hope had always known she was adopted. That part wasn't news. Her parents had picture books about adoption, and they'd always been open about the fact that she came to them in a special way. But she'd been too young to really understand the details before. Now apparently they thought she was old enough. What they told her that day changed everything. They explained how she'd been found as a newborn, abandoned in a dumpster behind an apartment building in Brooklyn. How a woman had found her and saved her life. How the police had never found her birth mother. How the Richardsons had adopted her when she was just 2 months old. Hope sat there, her ice cream melting in the cup, trying to process what she was hearing. Abandoned. In a dumpster. Thrown away like garbage. Why? Was all she could manage to say. Why would someone do that? Her mom took her hand. We don't know, honey. We've thought about it a lot over the years. Your birth mother must have been very young or very scared or in a terrible situation. People don't make choices like that unless they feel like they have no other options. But there are options, Hope said, her voice rising. There are hospitals, fire stations, places where you can leave a baby safely. Everyone knows that. You're right, her dad said, and we can't explain why she didn't use those options. We probably never will know. The thing that stuck with Hope the most wasn't even the abandonment, as horrible as that was. It was the fact that someone had found her. Someone had cared enough to look in that dumpster, to pick her up, to save her life. Someone whose name her parents didn't even know. The woman who found me, Hope asked. Who was she? Can we find her? Her parents exchanged another look. We tried, baby. When we first adopted you, we asked about her. But the records just say witness. The news articles from back then don't mention her name. We hit dead ends everywhere we looked. That night, Hope lay in her bed staring at the ceiling. She felt like her whole identity had shifted. Before she'd been Hope Richardson, adopted daughter, pretty normal kid. Now she was something else. The baby who'd been thrown away. The one who survived against the odds. And somewhere out there was a woman who'd saved her life, and Hope didn't even know her name. The teenage years were hard. Hope struggled with anger mostly. Anger at her birth mother for abandoning her. Anger at the universe for making her life start that way. Even sometimes anger at her parents for not trying harder to find the woman who'd saved her, even though she knew that wasn't fair. She saw a therapist for a while. Talked through the feelings of abandonment and worth. Her therapist helped her understand that her birth mother's choices weren't about Hope's value as a person. They were about circumstances Hope would never fully understand. That helped. A little, but the questions never went away. Who was her birth mother? Was she young, old? Did she ever think about the baby she'd left behind? Did she even know that baby had survived? And the woman who found her, who was she? Where was she? Did she ever think about that morning? Hope started keeping a journal when she was 14. She wrote letters to both women. Letters she'd never sent. To her birth mother, she wrote about her anger, her confusion, her wish that things had been different. To her rescuer, she wrote thank you notes, hundreds of them. Thank you for looking in that dumpster. Thank you for caring. Thank you for giving me a chance at life. High school brought some clarity. Hope got involved in volunteer work, helping at a women's shelter. She met girls her own age who'd gotten pregnant and were terrified. Girls whose parents had kicked them out. Girls who had nowhere to go and no one to help them. She started to understand, at least a little, how someone could end up making a desperate choice. That's when she decided what she wanted to do with her life. She wanted to help people like her birth mother, people who felt like they had no options. She wanted to make sure no baby ever had to be left in a dumpster because their mother felt trapped and alone. She studied hard, got good grades, and applied to colleges with strong social work programs. The Richardsons were proud of her. They'd always supported her even through the angry years, even when she'd lashed out at them for things that weren't their fault. They'd stuck by her through everything. College was good for Hope. She felt like she was finally moving forward instead of being stuck in the past. She learned about child welfare systems, about maternal health, about poverty and addiction and mental illness. She learned about all the reasons why people make impossible choices. And with each class, each internship, each paper she wrote, she felt like she was honoring both of the women who'd shaped her life, the one who'd given birth to her and the one who'd saved her. After graduation, Hope got a job with a nonprofit called Second Chances. They worked with at-risk pregnant women, providing resources, counseling, medical care, and support. They ran a 24-hour hotline for women in crisis. They had a program where new mothers could get diapers, formula, clothes, anything they needed. The goal was to make sure no woman ever felt so desperate that abandoning her baby seemed like the only way out. Hope was good at her job, really good. The women she worked with trusted her in a way they didn't trust other counselors. Maybe it was because Hope didn't judge them. How could she? She was literally the result of someone's desperate moment. She knew firsthand that the babies these women were carrying were real people who deserved a chance at life. On her 25th birthday, Hope woke up thinking about her birth mother and her rescuer, like she did every year. But this year felt different somehow. 25 years, a quarter of a century since that cold November morning when someone threw her away and someone else decided she was worth saving. She was having coffee with her parents that afternoon when she brought it up again. I want to try to find her, Hope said. The woman who found me. I know we looked before, but that was years ago. Technology is better now. Social media, public records databases. There has to be a way. Her mom reached across the table and squeezed her hand. If that's what you need to do, we support you. We'll help however we can. Hope started that night. She created a spreadsheet and began organizing everything she knew. Date, November 14, 1998. Location, Brooklyn, behind an apartment building. The police report would have more details. News articles might have information. There had to be a trail somewhere. She filed a Freedom of Information request with the NYPD for records from that day. It took 3 weeks, but they sent her a heavily redacted copy of the police report. Most of the personal information was blacked out, but she could make out a few details. The address of the building, 2847 Fletcher Avenue. The responding officers' names, and one line that made her heart skip. Witness Maria Santos, resident, called 911 at approximately 6:47 a.m. Maria Santos. She had a name. Hope sat at her computer until 3 in the morning searching. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, public records databases. There were dozens of Maria Santos who'd lived in Brooklyn at some point, but most had moved away. Most didn't match the right age range. She narrowed it down to 3 possibilities. 1. Maria Santos now lived in Florida. Hope found her on Facebook. She was the right age. But her profile said she'd moved to Florida in 1995. Not her. Another Maria Santos had passed away in 2010. Hope felt a strange grief reading the obituary, even though she didn't know if this was the right person. The thought that her rescuer might be gone, that Hope might never get to say thank you, was almost unbearable. The third Maria Santos still lived in Brooklyn, still at the same address on Fletcher Avenue. Hope found a phone number and address, a few small details. This woman was 63 years old, had 2 adult sons, worked as a manager at a local diner. It had to be her. Hope could feel it in her bones. She spent a week trying to write a message.
Email, Facebook message?
Letter? Nothing felt right. These things were too impersonal for something this important. This was the woman who'd given her life. She deserved more than words on a screen. Hope decided she had to go in person, face to face. It was the only way. She took the day off work and rode the subway to Brooklyn on a Saturday morning. The building on Fletcher Avenue was old but well maintained. Exactly the kind of place you'd walk past 100 times without noticing. There was a row of mailboxes in the entryway, and Hope's hand shook as she searched for the name. There. 3rd row, second from the left. M. Santos, apartment 3C. Hope stood there for 10 minutes trying to build up courage. What if it was the wrong person? What if Maria didn't remember? What if she didn't want to be found? What if Hope was about to ruin this woman's peaceful Saturday with a blast from a traumatic past? But she'd come this far. She had to try. Hope pressed the buzzer for apartment 3C and waited, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear anything else. There was a crackling sound, then a woman's voice. Hello? Hi, Hope said, her voice barely steady. My name is Hope Richardson. I'm looking for Maria Santos. Is this her? A pause. Yes, this is Maria. Can I help you? Hope took a deep breath. Can I come up? It's important. It's about something that happened 25 years ago. Another pause, longer this time. 25 years ago? I don't understand, please, Hope said. I promise I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just need 5 minutes of your time. It's about a baby. A baby you found? The intercom went silent. For a moment, Hope thought Maria had just walked away, but then there was a buzzing sound and the door clicked open. 3rd floor, Maria's voice said, sounding strange. Apartment 3C. Hope climbed the stairs on shaking legs. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was actually happening, her mind had gone completely blank. What was she going to say? How do you thank someone for saving your life? The door to apartment 3C was already open when Hope reached it. And there, standing in the doorway, was a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, wearing jeans and a sweater. She looked ordinary, like anyone's mother or aunt or neighbor. But to Hope, she looked like everything. Maria Santos? Hope asked, even though she already knew. The woman nodded slowly. That's me. And you said something about a baby? Hope's eyes filled with tears. 25 years ago, on November 14th, you found a baby in the dumpster behind this building. That baby was me. I'm that baby. And I came here to say thank you. Maria's face went completely white. She grabbed the door frame like her legs might give out. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She just stood there, staring at Hope like she was seeing a ghost. You. That was you? You're... Maria's voice cracked. You're alive. You're okay. I'm alive because of you, Hope said, tears streaming down her face now. And I'm more than okay. I'm good. I have a great life. I just needed you to know that. I needed to find you and say thank you. Maria reached out with shaking hands and touched Hope's face, like she needed physical proof that this was real. Then she pulled Hope into a hug, and both women started sobbing right there in the hallway. Maria kept saying, thank God, over and over, and Hope just held on tight. feeling something inside her that had been broken her whole life finally click into place. They spent the rest of that day sitting in Maria's small living room, talking. Maria wanted to know everything. Where had Hope grown up? Who had adopted her? Was she happy? Did she go to college? What did she do for work? Hope answered every question, showing pictures on her phone of her parents, her home, her job helping other mothers. You help mothers and babies? Maria's voice was soft. After everything you went through, that's what you chose to do? Because of everything I went through, Hope corrected. I wanted to make sure other babies didn't end up like me, that other mothers had options and support. Maria shook her head in wonder. You're amazing. You know that. You took something terrible and turned it into something beautiful. Then it was Hope's turn to ask questions. She wanted to know everything about that morning. Every detail Maria could remember. What time was it? How long had Hope been in the dumpster? What did Maria do? How did she feel? Maria told her the whole story. About taking out the trash. About hearing that faint cry. About how cold the baby was, how blue her lips were. About wrapping her in her coat and running upstairs. About how her hands had shaken so badly she could barely hold the phone when they called 911. I tried to adopt you, Maria said quietly. I don't know if anyone ever told you that. But I tried. I filled out all the paperwork. I bought a crib. My boys were so excited to have a little sister. Hope's breath caught. You tried to adopt me? Why didn't it work? Maria gave a sad smile. Money. It always comes down to money, doesn't it? I was a single mom working as a waitress. I was barely getting by with 2 kids already. The state said I couldn't provide for another child. They were probably right, financially speaking, but it broke my heart. I didn't know, Hope whispered. Nobody ever told me that. I always wondered if you thought about me, but I never imagined. I thought about you every single day, Maria said firmly. Every single day for 25 years. I prayed for you. I wondered if you were happy, if you were safe, if you knew that somebody loved you, even if we never got to know each other. They looked at old newspaper clippings together. Maria had kept everything in her Bible and she pulled it out to show Hope. The article with Maria's picture. The one that said, Woman Saves Abandoned Newborn. There was even a handwritten letter that Maria had written on Hope's 10th birthday but never sent. Hope read the letter with tears running down her face. It was everything she'd ever wanted to hear. That Maria hadn't forgotten, that she'd cared, that Hope had mattered to someone from the very beginning, even when she was just a nameless baby in a dumpster. Can I ask you something? Hope said after a while. What made you look in the dumpster? Most people would have just thrown their trash in and walked away. What made you check? Maria thought about it. I heard a sound. A little cry. I almost didn't check because I thought it was probably just a cat or something, but something made me look anyway. I don't know what. Maybe it was God, maybe it was just luck, but I'm so glad I did. Me too, Hope said. Me too, they talked for hours. About everything and nothing. Maria wanted to know about Hope's parents, and Hope showed her pictures of the Richardsons. Maria told Hope about her sons, Danny and Luis, who were both grown now. Danny was married with a kid of his own. Luis was in law school. They remember you, Maria said. Both of them. They talk about the day their mom brought home a baby. Danny especially, he tells his daughter about it. About how sometimes you have to help people even when it's scary or hard. Before Hope left that day, Maria asked if she could take a picture together. They stood in front of the apartment building, right near where the dumpster had been all those years ago. The dumpster was gone now, replaced by newer trash collection bins, but they both knew exactly where it had stood. Maria posted the picture on Facebook that night with a caption that said, 25 years ago, I found a baby in desperate need. Today that baby found me. She's alive, she's thriving, and she's making the world better. Miracles are real. The post went viral within hours. News outlets picked up the story. Local TV stations wanted interviews. The story of the woman who saved a baby and the baby who found her way back touched something in people. In a world full of bad news, this was a story about hope. Literally. Hope and Maria both agreed to one interview together, with a local news station. They sat side by side on Maria's couch and told their story. The reporter asked all the obvious questions, but the moment that really got people was when she asked Maria what it felt like to see Hope again. It feels like an answered prayer, Maria said simply. For 25 years, I wondered if I'd done enough. If that baby was okay, if she knew that someone cared about her. And now I know. She's not just okay. She's wonderful. And I got to meet her. How many people get that kind of closure? How do you thank someone for saving your life? The reporter asked Hope. Hope looked at Maria and smiled. I don't think there are enough words for that. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying. After the interview aired, Hope's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her parents called, crying happy tears. Her co-workers at the nonprofit were celebrating. Even people she barely knew from high school were reaching out to say how inspired they were by her story. But the most interesting calls came from strangers. Women who'd been in similar situations to Hope's birth mother. Women who'd made the difficult decision to give up their babies but had done it safely, through hospitals or adoption agencies. They wanted Hope to know they thought about those babies every day, that giving them up was the hardest thing they'd ever done, that they hoped those children grew up happy and loved. One woman in particular called and asked if she could speak to Hope privately. She was older, in her 50s maybe, and her voice was shaking. I need to tell you something, the woman said, and I need you to promise you won't try to find me or contact me again after this call. Okay, Hope said carefully. I promise. In 1998, in November, I gave birth to a baby girl. I was 17 years old. My father was abusive. I'd been living on the streets. I was in labor alone in an abandoned building, and I had the baby by myself. I was bleeding. I was scared. I thought I was dying, and I panicked. Hope's heart started racing. She knew where this was going. I wrapped her in the only blanket I had, and I left her somewhere I thought someone would find her. I was too afraid to go to a hospital. Too afraid my father would find out. Too afraid of everything. And then I ran. I've spent 25 years living with that guilt. Living with the fear that I killed my baby. That she died cold and alone because I was too much of a coward to do the right thing. The woman was crying now, gasping for air between sobs. When I saw your story on the news, and I saw the date and I saw where it happened, I think you might be my daughter. And I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was young and stupid and terrified, and I made the worst decision of my life. But not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about you. Not one day. Hope was crying too now. Her hand was shaking so hard she could barely hold the phone. You gave me life, Hope said quietly. You gave birth to me when you were just a kid yourself in terrible circumstances. And then you made sure someone would find me. Maybe it wasn't the safest way, but you tried. And I'm alive. I'm okay. I'm happy. Are you angry with me? The woman asked. You have every right to be. I was angry, Hope admitted. For a long time. But not anymore. I can't be angry at a scared 17-year-old girl who did the best she could in an impossible situation. I work with girls like you were every day now. I know how hard it is. I know how desperate things can get. They talked for almost an hour. The woman told Hope more about what had happened, about her life since then. She'd gotten away from her father. She'd gotten therapy. She'd tried to make amends for her past by volunteering at domestic violence shelters. She'd never had other children because she couldn't bear the thought of being a mother after what she'd done. You could be a mother, Hope said gently. You are a mother. You're mine. And even though we're not going to have a relationship, I want you to know that I forgive you, and I hope you can forgive yourself. After they hung up, Hope sat in her apartment for a long time, processing everything. She'd found Maria. And in a strange way, her birth mother had found her too. The two women who'd shaped her entire existence, who'd both made impossible choices that led to Hope being exactly who and where she was today. She called Maria and told her about the conversation. Maria cried hearing about it. That poor girl, Maria said. She must have been going through hell. She was, Hope agreed. And she has been for 25 years. Maybe now she can have some peace, Maria said. Knowing you're okay. Over the next few weeks, Hope and Maria figured out what their relationship would look like. They weren't mother and daughter. Hope already had parents she loved, and Maria had her own children. But they were something important. They decided to meet for coffee every Sunday morning, just to catch up and spend time together. The first few Sundays were a little awkward. They were still getting to know each other, still figuring out how to be in each other's lives. But by the 4th or 5th week, it started to feel natural. Comfortable. Like they'd known each other forever, which in a strange way they had. Maria met Hope's parents eventually. It was emotional for everyone. The Richardsons thanked Maria over and over for saving their daughter's life. Maria thanked them for giving Hope the childhood she deserved. There was a lot of crying and hugging. Hope brought Maria to her workplace and introduced her to her coworkers. They all knew the story by now, and they treated Maria like a celebrity. One of the young mothers Hope was working with, a 19-year-old, who'd been about to give up her baby, told Maria that hearing her story had changed everything. "If that lady cared enough to save a baby she didn't even know, then my baby deserves that kind of love too," the girl said. "I'm keeping her. I'm going to do whatever it takes." Maria cried hearing that. So did Hope. That November, on the 25th, anniversary of the day they first met, Hope and Maria went back to Fletcher Avenue together. They stood outside the building where everything had happened and held hands. "I was so scared that day," Maria said. "I thought you might die. I thought I might lose you before I ever really had you." "But you didn't lose me," Hope said. "I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." They stood there for a while, watching people go about their normal Saturday morning routines, taking out trash, walking dogs, getting coffee, normal life happening all around them. And they thought about how one moment, one choice, one cry heard on a cold morning could change everything. "Thank you," Hope said one more time, "for looking in that dumpster, for caring about a stranger's baby, for giving me a chance." Maria squeezed her hand. "Thank you for finding me, for letting me know that day mattered, that you mattered, that we both mattered." And standing there together 25 years after that cold November morning, both women felt something they'd been missing for. The coffee shop became their place. Every Sunday morning at 9, Hope and Maria would meet at the little cafe on the corner of Maria's street. They had their regular table by the window, and the barista knew their orders by heart. Black coffee for Maria, vanilla latte for Hope. Sometimes they'd talk for an hour, sometimes 3. It didn't matter. These mornings were sacred. They talked about everything and nothing. Maria told Hope stories about raising her boys, about the crazy customers at the diner, about her own childhood growing up in Brooklyn. Hope talked about her work, about the women and babies she was helping, about her dating life, which was, according to Hope, a disaster. "You're too picky," Maria teased one morning. "What's wrong with that guy from your office, the one who keeps asking you out?" "Brad? He's nice, but he's boring. He talks about his fantasy football league for hours. So tell him you don't want to hear about fantasy football." I tried. He switched to talking about his real fantasy football strategies. Maria laughed. "Okay, yeah, that's boring." These moments felt normal in a way that surprised both of them. They weren't trying to make up for lost time or force a relationship into some specific shape. They were just two people who cared about each other, spending time together. It was enough. But there were deeper conversations, too. One Sunday, Hope asked the question she'd been avoiding for months. "Do you ever wonder about my birth mother? About what happened to her?" Maria stirred her coffee slowly. "All the time, especially after your story went public. I kept thinking maybe she'd see it and reach out." "She did," Hope said quietly. "She called me, the day after our interview aired." Maria's eyes went wide. "She did? Hope, why didn't you tell me?" "I don't know. I needed time to process it, I guess. And she asked me not to tell anyone who she was. She doesn't want to be found." "What did she say?" Hope told Maria everything about the phone call, about the 17-year-old girl who'd given birth alone in an abandoned building, about the abuse and the fear and the impossible choice. By the end, Maria was crying. "That poor child," Maria whispered. "She was just a baby herself." "I know. And she's been carrying this guilt for 25 years. She thought she killed me. At least now she knows you're okay. That has to bring her some peace." "I hope so," Hope said. "I told her I forgave her. I meant it." Maria reached across the table and took Hope's hand. "That's a big thing, kiddo. To forgive someone who hurt you like that, even unintentionally. Not everyone can do that." "I learned it from you," Hope said. You could have been angry at her for putting me in that dumpster. But when I told you her story, your first reaction was sympathy. You saw her as a person, not a monster. Because people aren't monsters, Maria said. Even when they do monstrous things, they're usually just scared or hurt or desperate. That doesn't excuse what they do, but it helps explain it. That conversation stuck with Hope. It changed how she approached her work, too. She started a new program at Second Chances specifically for teenage mothers, girls who were pregnant and terrified, who had no support system, who might be considering desperate measures. She wanted to be the option that her birth mother never had. The program grew quickly. Within 6 months, they were helping 15 girls. Within a year, it was 40. Hope worked with them on everything from prenatal care to parenting skills to education and job training. She wanted these young mothers to know they had choices, real choices, not just between keeping the baby or giving it up, but choices about their whole lives. Maria started volunteering with the program too. She'd come in on Saturday afternoons and just hang out with the girls. She'd cook for them sometimes, bringing huge trays of lasagna or rice and beans from home. The girls loved her, called her Mama Maria. She had this way of making everyone feel cared for without being judgmental. One girl in particular, a 16-year-old named Christina, latched onto Maria. She was pregnant, homeless, and terrified. Her parents had kicked her out when they found out about the baby. She'd been sleeping in shelters and on friends' couches trying to figure out what to do. I keep thinking maybe I should just give her up, Christina told Maria one afternoon. I can't take care of a baby. I can't even take care of myself. You can, Maria said firmly. It won't be easy, but you can. And you don't have to do it alone. That's what we're here for. But what if I mess up? What if I'm a terrible mom? Maria put her hand on Christina's shoulder. You know what makes someone a terrible parent? Not caring. Not trying. You're already worrying about being a good mom, which means you're going to be fine. You'll make mistakes. Every parent does. But you'll figure it out. Christina ended up keeping her baby, a little girl she named Esperanza, Hope. She stayed in the program, got her GED, started taking community college classes. Maria babysat Esperanza sometimes, so Christina could study. Watching Maria with that baby, seeing how gentle and patient she was, Hope understood why Maria had tried to adopt her all those years ago. This woman was born to be a mother. On Hope's 26th birthday, Maria threw her a party. A real party with decorations and cake and all of Hope's friends. The Richardsons drove up from New Jersey. Maria's sons came with their families. Even some of the young mothers from Second Chances showed up with their babies. It was chaos in the best way. Kids running around Maria's apartment, people laughing and talking, music playing. Hope stood in the corner with her dad, watching it all. She's something special, isn't she? Her dad said, nodding toward Maria. Yeah, she really is. We're lucky we got to meet her. Lucky you found her. Hope leaned her head on her dad's shoulder. I'm lucky I have all of you. You and Mom, Maria, everyone here. I have so many people who love me. You deserve it, kiddo. After the way your life started, you deserve all the love in the world. Later that night, after everyone had left and it was just Hope and Maria cleaning up, they stood together at the kitchen sink washing dishes. Thank you for this, Hope said. For everything. Not just the party, but everything. For being in my life. Thank you for finding me, Maria said. For giving me the chance to know the baby I saved. You have no idea what that means to me. I think I do, Hope said. Because you've given me something too. Closure. Peace. Knowing that I mattered to someone from the very beginning. Even when I was just a nameless baby, I mattered to you. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, washing and drying dishes. Then Maria said something that had clearly been on her mind. I've been thinking about retiring from the diner. I've been there 30 years. I'm tired, and I want to spend more time volunteering with your program. Those girls need people like us, people who understand. I think that's a great idea, Hope said. You're amazing with them. They trust you. Maybe it's what I was supposed to do all along, Maria mused. Maybe finding you wasn't just about saving one baby. Maybe it was about learning that every baby, every mother, every person matters, that we're all worth saving.